Good evening. Thank you very much for coming and being with us today. My name is Angela Lytle, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Human Rights Institute, which is housed here at the Centre for Women's Studies and Education, here at OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies and Education at the University of Toronto, and that's a mouthful. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. I'm a little bit emotionally overwrought, I have to admit, because Grandma Gill is here with us, and maybe some of you saw in the Facebook event I posted earlier that she wasn't feeling well, and we didn't think she'd be able to come, but she is tenacious. She is a survivor, and she's an activist, and she said she's fine, and she's here, so I'm feeling a little bit overwrought. My connection to this issue comes because I used to live in South Korea, and at the time I got involved as an ally supporting with education and activism around the movement in the ways that I could. And our organization, the Women's Human Rights Institute, continues to have those connections and work with the Korean Council. Tiffany Hsiung, where is she? Yes, okay. Also has been working on this beautiful film for 7 years, and she has invited Grandma Gill and Meehyang to be here with us. So we're very thankful that we have the opportunity to. You probably couldn't get a ticket to the premiere if you were trying to see the film unless you were a VIP person, so we're really happy that we can have them here. I just wanted to make a few kind of opening comments. I won't talk too long, but part of our hope and the idea for having this panel here today was because Grandma Gill and Meehyang are here from Korea. They've been doing an incredible amount of activism for more than 25 years on this issue around Japanese military sexual slavery during the Asia-Pacific War. And we don't always get the opportunity to really overtly make the connections between what happened in that time period and the denial that has gone on for decades after the war with other instances of militarized and colonized sexualized violence against women. And so when we found out that Meehyang was coming and she asked us, she wanted to meet some feminist community and others, so we decided to try to put a panel together in which we could draw some of those links and bring an intersectional, transnational feminist analysis and understanding to the intersectional oppression and the kind of violence that is enacted on women in very particular ways throughout time and space, and to make those connections. So we're very happy to welcome our visitors here today. And in addition, in order to help us make those connections, we're really fortunate to have two respondents on our panel today. I will introduce them in more depth in a moment, but I want to thank very much Winnie Muchuba and Yanar Mohammed for agreeing to come and really help us start to make those connections. Systematic sexualized violence against women is a problem all around the world. In militarized contexts and in ongoing colonial contexts such as our own, of course, this is a daily occurrence. And what we hope is that this is an opportunity for us to expand movements that sometimes don't connect to each other and build connections so that we can move forward together in seeking justice, not only for the survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery, but for instances of sexualized violence in war, in conflict, and in daily life that are happening around us today. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we are on. And so if you have never heard this before, there's actually a text that the First Nations House Indigenous elders at University of Toronto have prepared to acknowledge not only the fact that we are on colonial land, but the names of the nations that have inhabited this land. So I'll read from the text the way that they have rendered it. I would like to acknowledge this sacred land on which the University of Toronto operates. It has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community and on this territory. In connection with that, although we have support tonight from the Aboriginal Studies program for the event, we weren't able, on somewhat short timeline to organize the event, to invite a First Nation speaker to come from the community. So I would like to at least say that we should have it in our hearts and our minds, and in the discussion, maybe we can make the connections to recognize the ongoing colonial violence against women here in our midst, including the particular ways that Indigenous women in this country are subjected to intersectional discrimination, and the fact that we are continuing on occupied land here in Canada. So let me take a moment to introduce our speakers for the evening, and if they feel comfortable and ready, they can come up and sit. Yoon Meehyang, or Meehyang Yoon, if you could join us. She is the director of the Korean Council for the Women Drafted for Military Sexual Slavery by Japan, which is the preeminent organization working on this issue in South Korea. Meehyang has dedicated more than 20 years of her life to supporting the survivor activists in their quest for justice and reconciliation, offering both personal and political support. She lives with the grandmothers much of her time, as well as going to the UN and doing all of the work that she does. The Korean Council engages in advocacy and education both inside of Korea and internationally around the issue, and they support the weekly Wednesday demonstration outside of the Japanese embassy in Seoul that has been running every week since 1992. It's the longest known successive demonstration, at least in our recorded history. They also operate a home for several survivors. They lobby extensively at the UN. And in recent years, they raised funds and opened a memorial museum for survivors in Seoul. As well, they also engage in solidarity work with women affected by sexual violence and conflict, up until now, including reaching out to women in DRCongo and Vietnam. So thank you very much for being with us, Meehyang. Yeah. Gil Wonok Halmuni, who is sitting here for the moment, and you'll get your chance to hear from her. She is a survivor of Japanese military sexual slavery, and she's a tireless activist who at 89 still travels the world seeking justice and to raise awareness about sexualized violence against women in war. She left her hometown of Pyongyang in Chosun then, Korea, now North Korea, in 1937 when she was 13 years old. She and other girls were lured with the promise of a job at a factory, but once they arrived, they were taken and imprisoned in so-called comfort stations to provide sexual service to the Japanese Imperial Army. After the war, Grandma Gil was unable to return to Pyongyang, and the situation on the Korean peninsula has prevented her from being able to return to her hometown up until now. She lives in Seoul and travels around the world fighting for justice. Another speaker that I'd like to introduce to you that we have down at the end is Tiffany Hsiung, who is filming you and Instagramming you probably at the moment. And the reason that this panel was able to happen is because of Tiffany and the incredible work that Tiffany has been doing using film as a way to bring awareness to the issue. So Tiffany is a Toronto-based filmmaker. She's the founder of Golden Nugget Productions, and she's director of The Apology, which is a powerful film that was produced with the NFB, but that she started long before the NFB got involved. Started with a Kickstarter. And it just had its premiere last weekend to high critical acclaim and promises to receive a great deal of attention internationally. Tiffany spent the last 6 years, or now 7 years, Tiffany? Tiffany spent the last 6 to 8 years of her life documenting the stories and activism of surviving comfort women in China, the Philippines, and in South Korea, including following around Gil Wonok Halmuni and Meehyang on many trips abroad and trips to Japan and so on. If you see the film, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about her life and her activism. So thank you for being with us, Tiffany, and congratulations on your film. So we'll start and we'll hear from Tiffany and from Meehyang. And we have with us also Judy Cho, who's going to be doing the translation and interpretation, but could be a panelist in her own right. So I'd like to introduce Judy. Judy's originally from Seoul, South Korea, and she's a program director at Alpha Education, which is an organization that promotes the learning and critical understanding of the history of World War II in Asia. They do a lot of work with the TDSB here in Toronto, and have successfully gotten the Comfort Women, Nanjing Massacre, and other issues that were not taught in the school system into the school curriculum. So Judy has been working as an educator and an advocate, and as well as being with Toronto Alpha, she does work aimed at empowering young women to help prevent violence. So thank you for being with us, Judy. She's also an excellent interpreter. And our respondents on the panel today, I'll introduce them now so you don't have to hear from me again for the rest of the evening. We're very, very pleased that you could both be here with us today to help us make these really crucial links between time and space, looking at the intersectional forms of oppression that shape women's lives in particular ways in many, many contexts, colonial, militarized, as well as in daily life. So I'll introduce first Yanar Mohammed. She's the founder and president of the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq. OFI is a socialist feminist organization with a political position against the occupation and against the Islamist parties who were supported into power by the US and the UK. So we start to see those transnational links that very importantly need to be made. In 2004, OFI started the first shelters for women in Iraq, protecting them from domestic abuse, honor killing, and later from endemic sex trafficking. And in recent years, the shelters have expanded into 6 locations, some of which are for survivors of ISIS. Yanar also launched the first secular and feminist radio in Iraq, and during a wave of Islamist militias killing and targeting of LGBT persons, she opened a shelter for people who were being threatened and helped to lobby against the homophobic attacks. So we're very, very pleased and happy to have Yanar here and all of her expertise with us. Our last respondent for today is Winnie Muchuba. She arrived in Canada as a refugee 2 years ago. Watching and experiencing civil unrest and militia conflicts in her native Congo, Winnie never thought she would have the opportunity to be involved in leadership and community development in her new home. But of course, she is an incredible woman leader in the community. She's now a member of a community advisory group at Parkdale Community Health Center, an active member of Romero House, member of Women at the Center, and actively involved in a leadership program at the TD Center for Community Learning and Development. And I happen to know that she also has raised a very large sum of money to support settlement of Syrian refugees coming into our communities. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I'm really awed and privileged to introduce you and share space with you. The way that we are going to sort of flow with the panel and the discussion is, since you've had a lot of talking, maybe we can start with Tiffany. I'm a talker and I'm a writer, and thank goodness there are people like Tiffany who use artistic means to do activism. Very important for us to build our movements in such multifaceted ways. So Tiffany will be sharing a little bit about her journey with the film and what inspired her in some clips. And then we will hear from Meehyang Yoon about the Comfort Women issue and their organizing. And Gilwono Kalmuni assures us that she feels good enough to talk, so we'll hear from here, and then we'll have an opportunity to hear from our respondents. Okay, great.
I think what would be good right now is to actually open it up first with like a trailer, just so everyone can understand what the apology documentary you get a kind of an essence, the taste of what the film is about. So maybe we'll start with that. All right, well, we're figuring out the technical details around this. So like Angela had mentioned, I started this project, started really learning about these atrocities, about this history back in 2009. I really never knew much about World War II in Asia, except for what my mother and father tried to tell me in very subtle ways and whatever was provided in the history textbooks in my high school. But it wasn't until I was invited to the Alpha Study Tour was when I really had a first account of the scale and what people had to go through and the institutionalized sexual slavery system that was in place. And from those initial 2 weeks, like many people, I was blown away, and I couldn't stand at just learning about it. I was more curious around the aftermath, the impact to these women specifically that it had on their life. And so from those initial 2 weeks, I called back at work, and I was like, I need to stay a bit longer. I don't know how long, but I just need to stay back. And I wanted to actually connect with some of these grandmothers, these women that I heard these testimonies with. Because for me, learning about atrocities is one thing, but I actually find that just learning about the atrocities still sets a distance between you and the experience and that history. But actually understanding the impact and that aftermath actually brings more of that universality, so you could actually connect with them and really understand what that war meant and what those atrocities and this issue really means to them. And is it up and running? Okay, so I'm going to start with this trailer. So maybe that's better is to actually play from that clip. So if you actually find, just go to YouTube and then just Google the apology hot dogs. We're just going to go straight into YouTube and depend on that to help us. So from that initial trip and spending the additional 2 months and finding out that I could actually meet some of the grandmothers where they live and just outside of the conference rooms, that's when I started this process of actually getting to know these grandmothers. And from 2009 till I guess now 2016, I spent the first 5 years getting to know them, for them to get to know me and building that trust and that relationship, so that the documentary really just is able to focus on the family, the relationships around these grandmothers, and also just the power of their human spirit. I think that's really important to understand, is that the goal for me of making this film was to show people that they're beyond just survivors, but really heroes and pillars for the next generation to understand the impact of such atrocities, but also to be able to teach us resilience and to teach us strength. And in order to do that, people need to see the woman behind the fist in the air, and to see what it actually takes for someone like Gilwinnock Harmony to travel around the world, to testify, to talk, to fight for justice. Ultimately, they're doing it for us. Ultimately, they're doing this so that this doesn't happen to the next generation. And so as I continued documenting and following them, it became very clear to me that that was the most important story to actually share with people. And from that interest, after connecting them with that, is the trailer? Yeah. Pause. Yeah.
근데 13살에 아무 생각 없이 그냥 모종지 가는데 얘기도 안 하고 그냥 떠나서 가보니까 그러니까 시방마을 위안부라 그럴까? Kasi yun pa sabi niya, tatlo, pulis mo lusan pa. Eh ako kay Google pa, natabo sa akong din na kaman, 14 years old. 结果呢，这太好的，我晓得，为了大声的喊我，第二个呢，2人才回来。我不想知道我妈妈的事情，他不告我就不知道。If I can tell my children all about it, I would be very happy. If they will accept. But I was been what happened to me. Sa naman ikaw, hindi lang ba siya ba nila? 내가 죄가 아니다. 지나온 시절 같은 이거 아니었다. 같이 싸워야지. 일본 사람이 거짓말 하지 말고 진짜로 가서 사과하는 거 봤으면 똑같아. 사과를 한다고 그 상처가 없어지니까 반대로 상처는 안 없어지지만 마음은 조금 풀어지니까 그날을 기다리는 거죠.
So, if you are interested in watching this film, I'm just going to put it, a little PR here. Now, the film is playing 2 more times at the Isabel Theater and Hart House on Sunday, so you can guys still catch a screening there at 12:45 and 6:30 p.m. There's other clips, but I think maybe I'll pass on the mic to Meehyang Yoon.
그 전쟁이 끝난 지 71년이 되어 갑니다.
It's been 71 years since the war ended.
그리고 지금 역시 우리가 사는 이 세상은 같은 전쟁이 반복되고 있고요.
But still, the wars continues happening in where we live.
그 전쟁에서 여성들은 성폭력의 피해를 당하고 있습니다.
In every war, there's women get sexually violenced. There are sexually violence against them.
성폭력 피해를 입지만 그 여성들은 성폭력 피해를 입었다는 것 때문에 공동체로부터 쫓겨나기도 하고 인간다운 삶을 파괴당한 채 평생을 살게 됩니다.
Although there wasn't that their choice, but just because they were raped during the war, they're ostracized afterwards, and then their lives has ruined. They cannot live as a normal human being.
일본군 위안부 문제가 일어난 것은 1930년대 초부터 45년 때까지 이루어진 일이었습니다.
So Japanese military sexual slavery has been ongoing since the early 1930s and until 1945.
1932년도에 쓰여진 일본 군 문서에 따르면 일본 군인들의 강간 사건을 예방하기 위해서 위안소를 세우자고 군 수뇌부가 의논을 하게 됩니다.
So according to Japanese official document in 1932, it says in order to prevent the rape, that we have to create the place that for conversation for these soldiers.
그래서 최초로 지금 현재까지 발견된 최초로 세워진 위안소는 상해에 있는 위안소였다라고 기록이 되고 있습니다.
So the very first conversation was established in Shanghai, in China, in 1932.
하지만 상해 그 위안소를 세울 때 이미 일본의 해군에서 그 제도를 본받아 왔다라고 기록되어 있는 걸 보면 그 이미 이전부터 일본 해군에는 비슷한 제도가 있었다라고 보여집니다.
But according to another document, that is a copy of whatever already existed in the Japanese Navy. So we can assume that there was this kind of system was already existed in Japanese Navy.
일본군 위안부 피해는 한국 남북 코리아를 비롯해서 필리핀, 인도네시아, 동티모르, 차이나 그리고 심지어는 인도네시아를 점령하고 있던 네덜란드 피해 여성까지 지금 현재 드러나고 있습니다.
So the victims is not only limited to Korean from south and north, but also Chinese and Filipinos and even Dutch who were occupying the Indonesia at the time.
우리 기로녹 할머니 같은 경우는 13살에 아까 끌려갔다고 얘기했는데요. 그건 사실은 한국 나이입니다. 여러분들의 나이로 하면 11살이 되죠.
So we told you that Grandma Kill was taken to be a comfort woman at the age of 13, but that is a Korean age. So in converted into Canadian age, she was actually 11.
한국에는 지금 현재까지 238분의 피해자가 신고를 했습니다.
So far, 238 Korean survivors registered.
그분들 중에서 끌려간 나이를 추산을 해보면 11살부터 28살까지에 이릅니다.
So of all those people, and if you, they were at as early as 11 and all the way to 28.
가장 많이 끌려간 나이가 14세부터 18세 이릅니다.
But most people were between 14 and 18.
그리고 북한 같은 경우에는 약 250명의 피해자가 신고를 했습니다.
In North Korea, they said about 250 survivors registered as a former comfort women.
영화에도 The Apology 영화에도 나오지만 약 20만의 이상이 되는 여성이 끌려갔다라고 추정이 되고 있습니다.
But the estimate numbers for the women who were taken to be a sexual slavery was over 200,000.
약 그 중에서 80%가 한국에서 끌려갔다라고 증언들을 하고 있습니다.
But according to testimonies, about 80% of that numbers are from Korea.
그러니까 남북이 다 합쳐봤자 지금까지 약 500명. 그리고 여전히 한국의 어떤 가부장제적인 문화 때문에 본인이 위안부 피해자였다라고 드러내지 못하고 있는 분들이 뭐 많아봤자 10,000명 혹은 50,000명이라고 크게 생각해서 50,000명이라 생각하더라도 여전히 10만 명 이상은 그 흔적조차 우리는 지금 현재 알 수가 없습니다.
So if I gave you a number 250 from North Korea and 238 from South Korea, if we add it up, it's about 500 people, and it's because of shame that a lot of women doesn't show up. So if you think those numbers are, let's say 10,000, even like generous number 50,000, there are more than half of people you don't even know where they are.
여전히 진실조차도 밝혀지지 않은 이 문제를 왜 아직도 우리는 이야기를 하고 있을까요?
So the truth for this sexual slavery, Japanese sexual slavery, is still not completely revealed. The investigation is not done properly, but we're still talking about it.
짧게는 1년 미만, 길게는 10년이 넘게 일본군 성노예 생활을 했던 여성들이 있습니다.
So some of them stayed in the comfort station as little as 1 year, and then some of them as long as 7 years.
기러녹 할머니는 13살에 끌려가서 18세에 해방이 되었습니다.
So Grandma Kill was taken when she was 13, and then she was released when she was 18.
또 한 명의 맹렬한 인권운동가인 김복동 할머니는 올해 91세인데요. 그분은 15살에 끌려가서 22살에 돌아왔습니다.
Another very active activist, Grandma Kim Bok-dong, she was taken when she was 15 and she was released in 22. Currently she is 91 years old.
필리핀이나 인도네시아나 점령지의 여성과 달리 한국과 대만의 어떤 일본의 식민지였던 나라들 같은 경우는 고향에서 잡혀서 전쟁터로 군인들이 일본군이 침략해 가는 곳곳마다 끌려다녔습니다.
Unlike those local women were raped in the battle where the Japanese soldiers invaded, the women from South Korea and the Korea from Taiwan, they were taken to wherever the Japanese army is invading and travel to.
중국인 민가를 뺏어서 사용하기도 했고요, 위안소로.
So sometimes they used the Chinese local house as a comfort station.
가는 곳마다 그냥 천막을 군용 텐트를 치고 그곳에서 여성들을 기거하기도 했습니다.
Or they used a temporary put up the tent used as a comfort station.
15살에 끌려갔던 정서훈이라는 피해자는 주말 같은 경우는 아침 8시부터 저녁 5시까지 일본 군인들이 줄을 섰다.
There's another grandma called Seon Jang, and she was taken when she was 15, and she said she was working from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m.
그런데 도저히 그 어린 여성의 몸으로 군인들을 상대할 수 없게 되자 아예 시작할 때 4-5대 마약을 놓고 시작을 했습니다.
But she was so little and she was too young to take all those ordeals. So every morning she was given the drugs to numb her pain.
92년도에 그녀가 처음으로 피해를 드러내고 저희 사무실에 찾아왔을 때 양쪽 팔은 여전히 그 마약 주사를 맞았던 주사바늘 자국들이 남아 있었습니다.
So when she first came to us in 1995, I could still see the needles on her both arms.
어떤 여성은 전쟁이 끝나고 나서 몽유병 환자가 되어 있었습니다.
Some of them are developed night walking or screaming at night.
밤이면 밤마다 일본 군인들이 줄을 서서 자신이 잠을 자고 있는 방 안으로 들어오는 그런 꿈을 꾸는 겁니다.
So they have nightmares every night that the Japanese soldiers lined up and in front and entering every night. And so that's their nightmares.
그런데 다른 한편으로 그렇게 살아 돌아오신 분들은 저희들과 함께 목소리도 내기도 하고 했지만 그 외에 수많은 피해자들이 왜 돌아오지 못했을까 하는 것은 지금도 저희가 일본 정부에게 그리고 전쟁을 멈추겠던 미군을 위시한 연합군이었던 나라들에게 묻고 싶은 질문입니다.
But the question lies, although their experience is very hard, but the survivors are still living with us and they're actively working on these issues. But those who never came back home, we have no idea what happened to them. So question to investigating what happened to them is still remain towards Japanese government and even the allies who ended the war.
다시 돌아가서 왜 이 문제가 여전히 지금 다시 얘기되고 있는가 그 이유를 첫 번째 저는 그 불처벌로 이야기를 하고 싶습니다.
So the reason that we are still talking about these issues is impunity that Japanese got after the war.
전쟁이 끝나고 나서 대부분 그 전쟁터에 버려져 있던 여성들은 미군의 포로 수용소에 수용되었습니다.
So most abandoned girls after the war, they were taken to the U.S. Army, the camp.
그 여성들은 신문을 봤습니다.
So they saw the newspaper. The girls.
그리고 미군 당국에 보고가 됩니다.
And then they were reported to the U.S. in the mainland.
메가더 사령관 같은 경우는 약 35페이지에 달하는 일본군 위안부 리포트를 작성합니다.
General MacArthur prepared the 35 pages report on these women at the time.
하지만 그 문서들은 1990년대까지 급비 문서로 자크가 채워졌습니다.
But the documents never been revealed until 1990.
그런 어떤 전쟁을 멈추겠던 나라들의 위안부 문제에 대한 침묵, 특히 굉장히 약소국이었죠. 식민지였던 조선 그리고 가난한 나라인 아시아 나라들의 그 일본군 위안부 피해자들의 인권 문제는 관심이 없었습니다.
So not many people paid attention to the women's human rights issues from those poor country, victimized country in Asia.
두 번째 이유는 바로 피해국, 한국을 위시한 피해국의 가부장제적인 문화였습니다.
And the second reason I think is we're still not resolved is because of patriarchal society in those victimized countries.
피해국 나라들은 이 일본군 위안부 피해를 어떤 역사의 공적인 책임으로 역사의 어떤 역사적인 문제로 인식하지 않고 피해자 개인의 수치로 피해자 개인의 책임으로 치부했습니다.
So they rather take these issues as human rights issues as their own people. They took it as this is a personal issue. So they put the blame on the survivors as a shame.
그래서 침묵할 수밖에 없었습니다. 피해자들은.
So the survivors cannot came forward. They have to keep in silence.
오히려 일본군 위안부 피해 사실이 드러나면 그때부터 사회에서 낙인을 받아야 했습니다.
So if you ever tell your experience to others, and then you get ostracized from the society.
그렇게 전쟁을 멈추게 했던 나라들의 은폐, 피해국의 침묵은 가해국의 계속되는 범죄를 만들어냈습니다.
So not revealing the truth by the allies, and also because of society, the gender inequality, so that kept the silence of the survivors.
일본을 점령했던 미군은 패전 후 진보 세력을 억누르고 오히려 전범 세력을 세웠습니다.
U.S. supported the government, who were the majority of people of the new government in Japan were from the war criminals.
그 대표적인 것이 아베 외할아버진 기시 노부스케였습니다.
The person that was very famous for that is Kishi Nobusuke. He is grandfather of current Prime Minister of Abe.
A급 전범으로 7명의 전범과 함께 교수형을 선고받았지만 미군은 6명은 사형했고 기시 노부스케만 살려줬습니다.
So he was charged. He was put to the court, and he was charged as Class A criminals. But out of 7 and 6 were executed, and then this one, the Nobusuke was released.
그리고 긴 세월이 지났습니다.
And then the time passed.
약 50여 년이 지난 후 한국에서 새로운 여성들의 인권을 요구하는 그런 목소리가 노동 현장에서, 사회 현장에서, 각 현장에서 일어나기 시작했습니다.
So the silence kept more than 50 years, but that's about where the women's voice has got stronger in Korea, and so there's a lot of movement around the women's issues.
특히 여성의 몸을 성상품화하고 한국의 경제 성장의 어떤 명분으로 섹스 투어의 희생양이 되게 하고 미군 기지촌의 희생양이 되게 했던 그 어떤 정책에 반대하며 성매매를 반대하는 그런 운동이 적극적으로 일어나기 시작했습니다.
And then there is a movement has created within Korea is against the sex trade within especially in the U.S. Army bases, and those women was taken to the Brussels. So there's a very strong movement against those.
그리고 여성들은 바로 이 일본군 위안부 문제를 과거에 그러니까 여성에 대한 성폭력 문제를 과거와 현재 뿌리 속에서 찾게 되고 일본군 위안부 문제를 해결하기 위한 그런 운동을 시작하게 됩니다.
So as they are doing this movement towards against the sex trade at the time, but they found the deep root lies in the Japanese military sexual slavery as well. So they are paying more attention on these issues.
그리고 1990년에 37개의 한국의 진보적인 여성 단체가 모여서 저희 정대협을 만들게 됩니다.
So that is a foundation of an organization I'm working at. The Korean Council is formed. The 37 women's organization at the time in 1990 gathered together and create this Korean Council organization.
그때부터 아시아 피해국의 여성들의 운동 연대체를 만들어내고요.
So we started to working with solidarity, working with other organizations from other countries.
남북 연대를 만들어내고요.
And working with even North Korea.
일본군 위안부 문제를 여성 인권 문제로 유엔에 갖고 갑니다.
And we bring these issues as women's human rights issues, and we presented that in UN.
그리고 우리들은 또 새로운 사실을 그때 알게 됩니다.
And then we found a new, we learned the new things at the time.
세계 각지에서 여성들이 전시 성폭력 피해를 입고 있다라는 것.
And that's there are so many women still suffering in the conflict zone as sexual slavery or rape victims.
여기 계신 기런옥 할머니와 한 분 김복동 할머니 두 분은 2012년 3월 8일 세계 여성의 날에 특별한 선언을 하게 됩니다.
So this Grandma Kill and another Grandma Kim I mentioned earlier, they announced big news on the March 8th, the Women's International Day in 2012.
그 당시에 일본 정부는 이 위안부 피해자들에게 법적인 책임이 아닌 경제적인 인도주의적인 지원, 돈을 지급하려고 하고 있었습니다.
At the time, the Japanese government was trying to give the money to the survivors, not from the government as a reparation as a crime compensation, but it was more like a humanitarian relief fund towards women.
그때 이 두 분의 할머니는 우리가 일본 정부에게 요구하는 것은 배가 고파서 밥을 달라는 게 아니다.
At the time, these two grandmas announced that what we are asking from Japanese government is not money or the food, just because we are hungry, we don't have a place to live.
우리가 일본 정부에게 요구하는 것은 역사의 진실을 올바로 세우라는 것이고 그것에 근거해서 공식 사죄하고 법적으로 배상하라는 것이다.
What we are looking for is to find the truth and then do the official apology and according to that and then do the proper compensation.
그 법적 배상을 받으면 나는 나를 위해서 쓰지 않고 그 전액을 지금도 세계 곳곳에서 일어나고 있는 그 전쟁으로 성폭력 피해를 입는 여성들에게 다 후원할 것이다 라고 선언을 합니다.
So these two grandmas announced that if I ever get the compensation, proper compensation from the Japanese government, I'm going to donate every penny of it to help the other victims from the violence in other areas.
그 pi해자들의 그 뜻이 굉장히 중요하고 의미가 있었기 때문에 저희들은 일본 정부의 법적 배상을 할 때까지 기다릴 수가 없었습니다.
I knew that how important that was to these survivors, so we couldn't wait until Japanese government do the proper compensation.
그래서 모금을 해서 나비 기금이라는 것을 만들었습니다.
So we started doing a fundraising and we created a fund. It's called the Butterfly Fund.
나비는 일본군 위안부 피해자들에게도 해방을 그리고 전시 성폭력 피해자들에게도 해방을 상징하는 그런 심볼입니다.
So butterflies symbolize kind of liberation towards the survivors and towards other victims of rape.
모금을 해서 그 해부터 콩고의 전쟁에서 성폭력 피해를 입은 여성들에게 날아가기 시작했습니다.
So the first recipient was the victims in the Congo the war conflicts.
두 기관의 두 피해자 단체에 매월 500불씩 지원이 됩니다.
We send $500 a month each to two organizations in Congo.
뿐만 아니라 어떤 세상을 평화롭게 만들기 위해서는 피해자들의 뜻대로 우리와 같은 피해자가 다시는 생기지 않기 위해서는 우리 내부의 폭력도 제거해야 된다고 저희들은 인식했습니다.
And also in order to create the world without the war, and we have to recognize the violence victims within our society as well.
그래서 미군 기지촌 피해 여성들과 함께 연대하고 지원하기 시작했고요.
So we start to support those women came from the Brussels and during the Korean War time.
그리고 또 다른 한편으로는 베트남 전쟁 때 한국군에게 성폭력 피해를 입었던 여성들에게도 매월 50불씩 지금 현재 찾아낸 30명에게 생활비를 지원하고 있습니다.
And we found the 30 Vietnamese women who were the victims of violence by Korean soldiers during the Vietnam War. So we are sending $50 per each woman every month.
그리고 한국 정부를 향해서 베트남 그 여성들에게 사죄와 법적인 책임을 져야 된다라고 요구하고 있습니다.
And we demand Korean government to do the official apology to those women.
뿐만 아니라 일본의 지진 현장에서 성폭력 피해를 입고 있다라는 여성들이 있다라는 소식을 저희들과 함께 연대하고 있는 여성 단체들에게 듣고는 할머니들이 우리가 그 여성들을 돕고 싶다. 우리는 일본 정부에게 우리의 문제를 해결하라고 싸우는 것이지 일본 시민들과 싸우는 것이 아니다. 라고 해서 모금을 하기 시작했었습니다.
And we also found out when the Japan had a tsunami attack a few years back, and within those earthquake and disaster area, there was some rape victims happening. So we reached out to those women, and then Grandma wanted to support them.
그게 감동이 돼서 한국에서 약 1,500만 원이 저희에게 모였습니다. 저희 단체만.
1,500만.
1,500만 원.
So that's yeah. So we raised about $15,000.
그래서 그 여성들에게 속옷을 구입을 해서 할머니들이 희망의 메시지를 포함해서 각 피난 현장에 전달하는 그런 활동도 진행을 했습니다.
So we purchased the underwears for the women, and each package has a message from the grandmas, and we send it to Japanese women.
작년에 한 분 피해자는 자기의 전 재산 5천만 원을 내오면서 나와 같이 전쟁에서 태어났다는 것 때문에 공부를 할 수 없었던 여성들, 그리고 나와 같은 피해자를 돕는 활동가들, 그 여성들에게 써다오 하시면서 5천만 원을 내어오셨습니다.
One survivor donated $50,000. That was entire her savings, but because she went through the war times and she never had a chance to study, so she wanted to support those children of the rape victims. If they wanted to study, that she wanted to put this money into as a scholarship for them, and any activist who wants to continue to study, she wanted to support that.
그렇게 피해자들과 우리의 운동은, 우리의 시민 사회는 세계 각지를 돌며 연대하면서 굉장히 많이 변했습니다.
So our movement has changed throughout the years as we collaborate with other organizations and then meeting with other victims and from all over the world.
하지만 일본 정부는 달라지지 않았습니다.
But still, Japanese government, there's no change.
물론 중간에 몇 번의 담화가 있었지만 여전히 일본 정부의 국가의 책임을 인정하지 않는, 법적인 책임을 인정하지 않는 그런 담화들이었습니다.
There are a few temptation from the talk from the Japanese government, but they never included the proper the truth or the proper the official apology.
그런 한편으로는 아까 그 티파니의 필름에서 봤겠지만 여전히 지금도 위안부 피해자들이 일본을 가면 바로 1m, 2m 앞에서 일본의 우익 단체들이 너희들은 창녀야, 늙은 할망구 꺼져, 이런 아주 큰 소리로 외칩니다.
As you saw at the trailer, and whenever the survivors travel to Japan, there's always right-wing groups come very close, like about a meter away from this grandmas as we're walking by, and they yell really loud voices, calling them prostitutes and then calling them names.
할머니들이 사는 쉼터에는 이상한 노래 CD가 락 밴드로부터 배달되기도 합니다.
And one time there was the song, there was a CD was delivered to where their grandma's staying. It was from the Japanese rock band.
친절하게 가사는 종이에 써서 보냅니다.
And it was lyric was written in the paper.
그 속에는 매춘부 할망구들을 쳐 죽여라. 조선에서 조선 사람들을 쳐 죽여라. 라는 내용들이 담겨 있습니다.
The lyric is basically what it says is kill all the prostitutes and kill all those Koreans. So that was the lyrics.
마찬가지로 일본군 위안부 문제를 해결하기 위해서 활동하고 있는 일본에 있는 여성들도 굉장히 어려운 상황에서도 일을 하고 있습니다.
But there are Japanese women's organization and civil organization working with us, but their condition is very, very, very difficult.
우리가 바라는 거는 일본 정부가 진정으로 자신의 일본 국가가 잘못했다라는 것을 인정하고 그리고 번복할 수 없는 방식으로 사죄하고 그리고 법적으로 배상하고 진실을 규명하고 역사 교과서에 기록하고 다시는 이런 범죄를 저지르지 않겠다라는 재발 방지 조치를 위해 힘쓰는 것입니다.
So what we want from them is we want the true investigation of what happened, and from that the Japanese government recognized that was their fault. There was a fault involved, and so they do the proper official apology and do the proper compensation. And more importantly, they have to write this history into their textbook, and also what was the last one? Yeah. So and continue to work on not to repeat the same mistakes again.
하지만 지난해 12월 28일 한국과 일본 정부가 피해자들의 의견도 무시하고 피해자들의 요구도 무시하고 피해자들 완전 배제한 채 정부끼리 회의를 하고 단 4일 만에 회의를 해서 최종적이고 불가역적인 해결이다. 다시는 국제사회에서 위안부 문제를 제기하지 않겠다. 수요 시위를 천차가 될 때 세웠던 평화비도 철거할 수 있도록 한국 정부가 노력하겠다라는 합의를 후다다닥 해버렸습니다.
Well, unfortunately, you may know, December 28th last year, 2015, the Japanese government and Korean government announced this agreement, which didn't include any voices of survivors and didn't include any wrongdoings and didn't include any, and also it says this is a final, and then they're not going to talk about these issues anymore, and also, there's a peace statue erected for the grandmas, and they will work. They'll do their best to resolve to meaning the getting rid of the statues. So that was a part of the agreement.
그 합의에 반대하는 저희 정대협에 대해서 오히려 한국의 우익 보수 단체들 그리고 보수 매체들이 오히려 공격하는. 그런 현상이 지금 벌어졌습니다.
So right now what's happening in Korea is there's an attack towards our organization and because it's against government. So there's a lot of attacks coming from the right-wing groups within Korea.
지난 25년 동안 우리가 한 번도 포기하지 않았던 피해자들에게 정의를 향한 이 행진, 이 걸음, 이것이 잠깐 지금 약간 꺾여 있습니다. 많이는 아니지만 약간.
So what I see is just a little. I think it's a little hurdle. It's not a big thing, but that is the truth. So we've been working on these issues for 25 years, and we just went forward. But right now, like we're just stumbled by this small barrier.
하지만 이 약간이 정부가 만든 것이기 때문에 우리에게는 연대가 필요합니다.
But unfortunately, the barrier came from our own government. So this is a more important time that we have to work with other partners and other organizations.
전시 성폭력 피해자에게도 법적 배상 받을 권리가 있다라고 입증시키면서 국제사회 여론을 만들었던 이 여성들에게 정의가 실현될 수 있도록 뿐만 아니라 이 여성들에게 정의가 실현되는 것을 통해서 지금 성폭력 피해를 입고 있는 수많은 여성들 그리고 아이들에게 희망이 될 수 있도록 여러분들이 손을 함께 잡아주시기를 부탁드리겠습니다.
So what I wish from you is the survivors themselves, they've been working on these issues, making the Japanese military sexual slavery issues, they create this one as a women's issues. It's a women's rights issues. And they and their wish is making a justice for turning this justice into hope for all the children and all the women who are victimized during the wartime in other parts of the world. So your support, your continuous paying attention to this issue is very, very important.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you very directly Gil Wonok Halmoni, who is going to spend a little more time with us and then go and have some rest. So we'll hear from her now. Thank you, Halmoni.
서울서온 길원옥입니다.
My name is Kiron Wok. I came from Seoul, Korea.
무슨 얘기를 하라고?
이 분들에게 할머니가 부탁하고 싶은 말씀. 이 분들에게 할머니가 부탁하고 싶은 말씀. 다시 못 만나잖아요, 이분들 이제. 예.
여러분들 앞으로 할 일이 많으실 테니까 열심히들 하셔서 이 나라 부흥시키십시오.
I know you're busy and you're doing a lot of stuff, but work hard to make this Canada as a wonderful country.
앞으로 할 일은 젊은이들이 할 일이니까 많이들 하셔서 나라 부흥시켜 주시면 고맙겠습니다.
I know all the work lies on the young people, just like you. So work hard and make this country as beautiful as it is.
Halmoni, I think the burning question on everybody's minds is what we can do to help you.
어떻게 하면 저희들이 어떻게 하면 할머니한테 도움이 될까요?
저한테 도움은 여러분들이 열심히 살아서 그저 옆에 보지 말고 앞만 보고서 열심히 살아주셨으면 감사하겠습니다.
I would be really, really thankful. Don't go to the side track. Don't fall in the side track. Always look forward and then go straight. And that's what I wish for you to live, like go straight.
I like to say about 기련옥 할머니는 조금 늦게 신고를 하셨습니다.
She came to register a little later than other grandmas.
우리가 1990년부터 활동을 시작했는데요. 할머니는 1998년에서야 세상에 얼굴을 내밀으셨습니다.
So we started this movement since 1990, but she came to us in 1998.
그때 처음 만났을 때 할머니는 입에 나는 부끄러운 여자예요, 부끄러운 여자예요를 거의 한 문장을 이야기하시는데 한 3번 정도 이야기하셨어요.
So when she came to us, she always says, within a one sentence, she used, I'm very shameful, I'm shameful, I'm shameful at least 3 times.
그런데 2002년부터 활동을 시작을 하셨어요.
But she became more active 2002.
끊임없이 저희가 할머니 집을 찾아갔고 처음에는 대인기피증이었어요. 아무도 찾아오지 말아라. 그런데 끊임없이 문을 두들겼고 나중에는 저희들에게 할머니 말문을 열기 시작하셨고 수요시에도 오시기 시작하고 그러면서 내가 부끄러운 여자가 아니구나 하는 것을 인식하기 시작했습니다.
She initially she doesn't want to see other people and she doesn't want to go on the public and then she doesn't even want us to visit her house. But we continuously visit her and eventually she started coming out to Wednesday demonstration and she realized that wasn't her. It wasn't her fault. So there's nothing to be shameful of.
그때부터는 정말 한 주도 수요시에 빠지지 않으셨어요.
So when she realized that she never missed the Wednesday demonstration since then.
아무리 추워도 아무리 더워도 늘 길거리에 서셨습니다.
Even coldest day, hottest day, she always came to Wednesday demonstration.
세계 어디 나라에서도 나를 오라 그러면 내가 필요하다면 간다라고 하고 오셨어요.
And she always traveled to any other countries willingly, and she said, "If you call me, I'll be there."
2007년도 EU 나라를 네덜란드로부터 시작해서 영국, 독일, 벨기에 투어하셨습니다.
So in 2007, she traveled Europe, and she did Netherlands, England, Belgium, and those areas.
그때 굉장히 많은 유럽 사람들을 감동시켜서 결국은 유럽연합의회 결의 채택에 굉장히 중요한 역할을 하셨어요.
So she played a key role when the EU passed the motion on the comfort women at the time.
근데 약 한 3년 됐을까요? 할머니의 기억이 급속도로 사라지고 있습니다.
But last 3 years, her memories rapidly is going.
그런데 신기하게 노래는 어릴 때부터 노래 가사는 하나도 잊어먹지 않고 계속 부르세요.
But she never forgets about the songs that she sang from when she was little.
그래서 어느 날 제가 물었습니다. 할머니 어쩜 그렇게 어릴 때 노래 가사는 잊어버리지 않는데 할머니가 전쟁 때 겪었던 그 역사는 그렇게 빨리 없어져요라고 물었어요.
So I asked her questions. You remember very well of all the songs that you sang when you were little, but how come you forget about the things that you experienced during the war?
그랬더니 하시는 말씀이 그걸 다 기억하고 살았으면 나는 살지 못했을 거예요 하는 것이었어요.
And her answer was, if I remember all of it, I may not be survived until now.
그 기억이 사라지고 있기 때문에 나는 지금 웃을 수 있어요라고 얘기하셨어요.
She said, I'm able to smile because I'm losing that memory.
그래서 어쩌면 할머니의 기억이 저렇게 빨리 사라지는 거는 본인이 의도해서 더 빨리 잊어버리고 있는 게 아닌가 하는 생각을 할 때가 있습니다.
The speed of her memory loss is getting faster and faster, but I think it comes from her willingness to forget about what happened.
그렇게 열심히 인권 활동가로 평화 활동가로 힘써 오셨던 그분이 아직 조금이라도 기억이 살아 있을 때 내가 용서하고 가고 싶다 하는 그 이야기를 실현할 수 있도록 여러분께서 더 힘을 모아 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
So when she still have that little bit of memory, I wish she has a chance to really forgive, meaning that she can get the apology. So your support is greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? Since I met Gilwinnock Harmony in 2009 and the documentation that we have of her, it's like night and day. And the last coherent interview was I think the last one was in 2012. And ever since 2012, we were watching someone lose their memory. And I was thinking to myself, and I was talking to Meehyang, what do we do? And then it dawned on me, this is what we have to do right here, right now. We are documenting so they can forget, and then we can remember. They could let them forget so we can remember. It is our responsibility right now, each and every one of us today who listen to any of these stories, any of these testimonies, let them forget so that we can carry on and fight for them. Because that type of burden, that type of memory, they need to be free from that. And Gilwinnock Harmony said one time, and I remember on the bus in China, she says, losing her memory is like a medicine, like the best medicine she could take right now. And I was conflicted because we were trying to capture all of the everything that she could remember. But then at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, that's great. Let it all go.
I think we'll keep the questions to the end so that we can hear well from our other speakers. And I can imagine it's already really burning in everybody's minds about what they are going to do or want to do. So I'll just mention it now in case you have to leave early. The email list that we had at the door, I will send a follow-up email with a link to the petition, the 100 million signatures campaign that the Korean Council has been engaging in, and hopefully we can promote both some local and international level activism. Gil Wonok Halmoni traveled to see UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in New York this year because he was also praising the agreement that the South Korean government and Japanese government made together. So it takes every moment of all of our vigilance to watch what they're doing and saying. Because she's 89 and she's still getting on the plane and has to go tell Ban Ki-moon to his face to grow up, right? But she did it. So I won't say any more. We'll just hold the questions for the end, and I would like to pass the mic over to Yanar Mohammed, who we're so happy to have with us today.
Thank you. It was very touching to hear the experience, and for many of the parts that I heard, you know how you have a translator for English? In my head, I had a visual translation of the parallels that happened in Iraq. It's amazing how some of these issues happen in parallel in colonized countries and in colonized human beings. My memory first goes to 2003 when Iraq was first occupied, and I was there in end of May, and we decided to found a women's organization, and we were thinking of the name, what to call it. And in my head, I thought freedom, because that is most probably what we will be losing as women in Iraq. And it just took 1 or 2 months for us to find out that in every neighborhood in Baghdad, young girls were being kidnapped in broad daylight from the doors of their houses and taken to places where nobody knows. And this is the end of 2003. So we began to hold our informal meetings in the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq. And we began to ask the questions, who's taking these women and why? And like there could be one sick person or second sick person, but for hundreds of young women to be taken away, it was not understandable for us. So in our organization, we wrote the first letter to Paul Bremer, the US administrator, and we told him, you are responsible of the women who are getting lost. We don't know where they're going, but eventually after 1 or 2 years, and 2 years not all, we found out that there are big markets of brothels in the cities, in the surrounding countries, in Syria when it was not at war at the time, in the Emirates where there were many rich sheikhs who are willing to buy these young women, and in other cities in Iraq also. So we began to speak about let's see if we can raise a woman's resistance against this. And we held the first demonstration in Al Fardos Square, and we took our slogans with us saying, stop the trafficking of young women in Iraq. And it was just a few women because not everybody would be brave enough to come down to the downtown and hold this demonstration. And we were surprised that the first ones to show up were US soldiers and officers. And one of them came to me and he said, ma'am, where is your permit for demonstration? And this is like we're speaking August 2003. There is still no government. There are still no governmental places running. Everything's down, and he wants to see our permit to hold a demonstration. We began an argument back and forth, me and him, and in the end he was not polite and he used a very bad word. And I had to tell him, look, you want my permit to demonstrate, show me your permit to come into my city. And that was the time when we began to feel that not many will be standing with you when you are defending the frontline issues. surprisingly, many people in Iraq, especially the conservative part of the society, would tell us, why are you defending women who have been trafficked into sex? This is like prostitution. Do you want your name to be smeared by prostitution? The patriarchs really came bad at us. Like as women's organizations, you find out it's not an easy struggle. And they want you just to speak very timidly about women's education, women's work, but nothing to be related with the sexual exploitation of women. So many women around the world do this, and I really applaud my Korean colleagues for taking on the fight and taking it very strongly. And I would like to mention some of the parallels here. The organization which attracts other organizations to make a group to defend the women who have been victims of sexual violence, that is a lesson that we learn in colonized communities. We started in September 2009 our own network. We called it Network Against Trafficking for Women in Iraq. And we attracted more than 40 NGOs to it, so we can have the outreach to women who have been trafficked and exploited around Iraq. And the government doesn't want to hear about it. And you would be surprised, the US liberators, so-called liberators of Iraq, they weren't also willing to take with this issue or to speak about this issue. So we found out that we have to take it on our own, and we started our own newspaper, our own radio, and we began our own network to get women out of sexual exploitation. It took a very bad thing to happen in Iraq, like ISIS, for the world to look at the issue of sexual exploitation. And we had to take it as an opportunity to stand against the issue of sexual enslavement. And we demanded that the government gives compensation for the victims. And the government did approve, in May 5, did approve to this demand. But we have not thought of some of the lessons that I'm hearing now, like the apology that has to be put in place, like the listings of women who have been exploited. We are working on that, but still it's not there yet. I see many things in parallel here. And unfortunately, we find out that when a country is exploited, it's not only oil that is taken away. It's all the resources are taken away. And when there isn't much to buy anymore, human beings get bought. Between 2003 and 2005, the price of a virgin girl was $200 in the local market and $4,000 in the Emirates and the regional market. We had a pricing. And I'm not saying this thing happened in one of the neighborhoods. It even happened to me once when I was crossing the street to get my lunch. I wasn't kidnapped. I was careful. I had a male colleague with me who had a gun with him. And the sex trafficking gangs were everywhere. Until now, the industry is very high in Iraq, and we have extreme difficulty of knowing how to stop it. And the government is an accomplice in it, because the officials have their nightly entertainment available for them. So it's the few who are very rich in the green zone, and it's the majority who are very poor, and the women's flesh is being eaten by this colonized politics in Iraq. Many of the things I heard today really angered me, because it seems like it's a pattern in places where there are war. And the one difference between that war and the war in Iraq is that the US divided the people in Iraq upon themselves, upon sectarian lines, and then made us fight against each other, and each sect is trying to exploit sexually the women of the other sect. And until this very moment, there are no laws and no practices from the government that are being done against it. It's not something that the locals decide, but this is a top-down kind of decision. when you allow half of the country to exploit and to oppress the other half of the country, which is sectarian politics, it reflects on women. The parallels are so many, and I don't want to take too much time, but I really applaud the efforts that I see taking place here, and I feel that we in Iraq have lessons to learn from what you have achieved this far. We have tried to start many initiatives that are in parallel with what you've done, but I feel that there needs to be more of an international effort to make us feel like a global power, where it comes from down to up, like women who are in the colonies should not be the weakest. We are like almost 1/3 of the world. Maybe an international initiative may start from places like these. Thank you.
As I introduced earlier, our next speaker is Winnie Muchuba. Thank you so much again also for being with us today.
I'm so impressed and emotional for all the speech, because it's getting me back to my situation and to my country. I'm from Congo, the democratic, and many of them know Congo. Congo, sometimes the women ask themselves that why I was born a woman. I'm from Congo, and I wish my grandmother could also have ability to talk and to say what happened to her life. My grandmother died, she didn't even talk because what happened in her life was so horrible. Today I'm not talking about her, but I'm talking about myself. I had to flee my country with my children because my husband was assassinated. And what made me like me in self, because I had a speech talking about the experience, what I lived with my husband when he was defending the country. You can feel my accent. I speak French, and I'm just 2 years here, and I'm still struggling with English, but I'll try to explain myself. I apologize. And can you imagine that every single day in DRCongo, I think my colleague can confirm, 1,100 women are raped. Every single day you can check in the UN report, and you will find out. We start the conflict since the conference of Berlin, where there was making the boundaries between the Congo and all over our country and our neighbor. Since we have now 100 years of conflict, and the victims, they are just women. Why women? Why they want to exterminate us? Why the sex violence became a weapon of war? We are so tired. I'm here really, I can tell you that I was witnesses all those women at the hospital in Panzi. I think some people know about Dr. Mukwege. He tried to repair those women mutilated by sex. Imagine, they just rape you, and then they take the stick, they introduce you in the vagina. He tried to repair the blood, but the first time he was like, okay, maybe it's just 2 times, 3 times, and then keep coming, 300, 500. And when he starts talking about that, what happened to him? They came and wanted to kill him. They killed his watchman, and then they put him in some places and they wanted to kill him. But he was good. He had the gunshot and he saw his watchman killing and he started calling. And when he called, some people from the UN came after and take care of him. Today, if I'm here, really, like my husband was starting talking about that. And in my country, when you open your mouth talking about reality, really you are died. And they killed my husband like someone in the butchery. They tried to follow him, with guns, but they couldn't because he was also having some experience. He was living in China, where like in my country, when you turn, in the time of Mobutu, you turn 18 or 16, they send you like for the army, and he went to Japan and he went to China too. And after he finished, he was in German. And he came really with those experience from outside, and he wanted to construct something in my country. And he started by my village. Imagine we got those trouble like since Shukram in 1922, and then Mulele, and then after the 80 days of war in my just village, where every time when the soldier come, the conflict, they were just starting by women. And for that now, I don't know what number of AIDS, HIV in my country for women. Most of them, they don't talk about what's happening in their life. It's just silent. Because no one will just look at you after knowing what is happening to you. Today, I'm not talking really much about myself, but I'm also a survivor. When I tried to flee in Uganda with my children, they didn't leave me in peace. Until I'm now here, where I have freedom, I can speak in front of all people. Just because I want those things to stop. Abuse zero for women. Abuse zero for all kinds of violence in the family. I don't know, we had the report from the UN, but what happened? Why they don't just go and take those people and put them in jail? I did the human rights in my country. I have a master in international human rights and human rights at the university called UCB, in French, Université Catholique de Bukavu. We were signing petition about, we wanted the mixed lawyer to come and investigate about what is going since 1992. We didn't even go far, but just 1992 to 2010, I was a student at university at this time. But what happened, the diploma when you want to be graduated must come from the national department. But we couldn't be able to have our diploma. Why? Because we were the one like wanted this petition to be signed to call the international lawyers to come and investigate in our country. Can you imagine what the government can do for us to stop this? When someone wants to help those abusers, the abused, they just try to kill you. Now, every time when you have a lawyer and want to talk, I remember that before me to come here, I was like, okay, I'm having some call. They're just trying to make me scared that, okay, you're going to also follow your husband because you don't want to shut your mouth. I did law. I must, like, one day my children will ask what's happened to our dad. I want to be able to explain them what's happening to them. And then I tried, but I didn't know that I went to knock in wrong door. I went to police, but after, in the lake, they was following us. They want to come in my compound, coming by the lake. I went to report. I didn't get some safety. And then after I went to some organization of human rights, they say, you know what? You should just leave because we don't want to lose you also. Now you're gonna go and try to figure out if you're gonna have a solution, but you're putting yourself in shame. You're putting your life also in danger, and I have small babies to take care of them in future. That's why today I'm here, my children still in Africa, but I know that I'm still fighting until we know what we can do to stop those violence. Not just for me, but just for all those people who are suffering and who still struggling with stigma, with the trauma, and what they are keeping in their heart. To be able to talk about is so difficult. I just heard what they say, even if they apologize, but can you forget what's happened in your life? I was not sleeping when I was here. I try to forget now because now I'm talking. I remember when I came, I was trying to forget, but everything was coming. Night, when people are sleeping, I'm not sleeping. I just think about, it's like a movie coming and coming in my head. But I know that there is people fighting, and I'm so glad that women are standing for other women to see if we can have again the honor to be a woman. I thank you, everyone.
이 자리에서 이 두 분을 만나게 돼서 저희 운동에 있어서는 너무 의미가 큰 것 같습니다.
It's very meaningful and an honor to meet two of you here.
가장 중요한 것은 피해자들의 연대 중요하다고 생각을 합니다.
I think it's most important thing is working together, all the survivors of all conflicts working together.
이 땅에서 전쟁을 만들어내고 있는 그 시스템들, 피해자를 지원하는 것도 굉장히 중요하고요. 그리고 뿐만 아니라 계속 피해자들을 지원하는 것만으로만 머무르는 게 아니라 전쟁을 만들어내고 그 전쟁에서 또 무기를 팔아먹고 불을 취하는 사람들이 또 다른 전쟁을 저지르고 하는 그 시스템이 달라지지 않고서는 계속해서 같은 피해가 재발될 수밖에 없다는 생각이 좀 들었습니다.
So supporting the survivors individually, that is very important. But the more importantly, we have to fight for the system who creates this war and the victims and all the violence within that society.
그것은 한국에서만 싸워서 될 일은 아닌 것 같고 역시 어떤 세계 각지에 살고 있는 사람들이 다 네트워크가 되어서 그런 전쟁을 만들어내고 있는 시스템을 변화시키고 피해자들이 더 이상 재발되지 않는 그리고 피해자들이 당당하게 사람으로 살아갈 수 있는 그런 문화를 만들어 나가는 그런 활동을 해야 되지 않나 하는 생각이 좀 들었고요.
So I think that our movement has to create an environment where the survivors don't feel shameful and can live as close to normal life as possible and fight against the system who creates a war and become rich over selling the weapons and whatnot.
저희 운동을 통해서 우선 그 시작을 한번 해보겠습니다.
So I'll start those movement, all the movements I've been working on.
반드시 가해자는 처벌받아야 된다라는 것, 법적 책임을 이행해야 된다라는 것.
The number one, the perpetrator has to be punished, and then they have to recognize that that is wrongdoing.
그리고 그 범죄를 은폐했던 사람들도 책임을 져야 한다라는 것.
And also is a responsibility for those people who hide this the truth.
그리고 그 범죄를 그 피해를 침묵했던 우리 사회도 책임을 지고 반성해야 된다라는 것.
And also the society to allow this silence for long has to apologize.
피해자들은 당연히 사법적 정의를 그러니까 사법적 정의 실현에 권리가 있다라는 것.
And the survivors have a rights for the legal reparation.
저희가 25년을 달려왔기 때문에 계속해서 포기하지 않고 여러분들도 우리를 보면서 희망을 가질 수 있도록 열심히 해보겠습니다.
So I've been working on this issues more than 25 years, and I'm not going to stop. And I hope that will give you some kind of hope to you, for you to go on.
제가 29살 때 이 일을 시작해서 지금 53살이에요.
I started when I was 29, and now I am 53.
오로지 이 문제만 했습니다.
I only working on these issues.
이 운동을 하면서 나비 기금이 필요하다는 것도 알았고요.
And through my experience, I learned that the Butterfly Fund is very much needed.
저희가 유엔에 가서도 미국에 가서도 영국에 가서도 이 나비 기금을 이야기하면 수많은 사람들이 감동을 받고 희망을 갖고 있는 걸 알고 느끼고 있어요.
So I feel that whenever I share this butterfly funds to wherever I travel, Europe, any countries that I travel, they get inspired, and so I think it is very important.
그런 모든 사람들을 그 감동받는 마음으로만 감동받게 하는 게 아니라 우리의 활동 속으로 네트워크 할 수 있다면 충분히 우리의 편도 더 많이 만들 수 있지 않을까 하는 생각이 들고요.
So I think that not only they are inspired, but also I like them to invite them to join our movement and then work together.
콩고 문제, 이라크 문제 저희도 더 열심히 펴겠습니다.
And also I will support you. What's happening in Iraq and in Congo, will continue to work for you as well.
유엔에 가서 이야기할 때도 반드시 콩고 문제, 우간다 문제, 이라크 문제, 그리고 IS 등등 무력 분쟁에서의 성폭력 피해를 일본군 위안부 문제와 함께 다루면서 변화시킬 수 있도록 그렇게 노력하겠습니다.
So whenever I have a chance to speak in UN and any other places, I bring it up on all the issues, and so it will be a more hopeful, and then there will be a resolution for all these.
그래서 제안을 하나 하고 싶은데요. 가능하다면 6월 유엔 인권 이사회에서 이 데스크가 그대로 사이드 이벤트로 가면 어떨까 하는 생각이 들었어요.
So I'd like to suggest that there is a UN rapporteur is coming out in June on the women's human rights issues, and I'm preparing to do the side panel. I wish all these panelists travel to UN and then do another panel discussion there.
Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing, for the work that you do and the dedication, and for putting so much of yourself into it, stepping out to share with the rest of us so we can learn and build and make the connections. One of the reasons I've admired and supported the work of the Korean Council for so many years is because they make those crucial connections from a very intersectional feminist perspective to understand the issue. And quite often, I'm really excited tonight to see such a diversity of people here from different backgrounds, different issues, because quite often when we do events on the comfort women issue, it's mostly people who come from the communities or ethnic groups that were affected historically. And we kind of act in little silos, and we don't always have the opportunity to make the connections. And so in our work, we always have to make those connections. And I'd really like to show admiration to Meehyang for doing that. And we'll continue to build those relationships moving forward. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but she's still laughing and smiling. So Tiffany has to leave before we take the Q&A. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank Tiffany again for bringing Harmony and Meehyang here. For 7 years of your life, you've invested in the film that are going to share the grandmother's stories around the world and keep the fight going moving forward. And I would highly encourage you to see the film next Sunday at one of the remaining showings if you haven't seen it already. So thank you, Tiffany. And again, I would invite you to leave your email address with us, so at least we can send you some petitions and actions that you can take to help support the quest for justice. And the idea came to me that those of us who are here in Toronto that care very deeply about these issues, that there's also opportunities for us to get back together and coordinate and think about how to support ongoing actions. And I'm based here at the Center for Women's Studies and Education, and so I will happily make that space for those of you who want to come together at a future time once we receive some direction from our wonderful speakers about what we can do and to support their efforts moving forward. So I thank everybody very much for joining us here this evening, and let's have another round for our speakers. Thank you.